Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450 is a motorcycle that should at least on paper be right up my alley. As some of you may know by now, I am a big fan of slower, cheaper and just cheap and cheerful motorcycles in general. I mean, all of the 40,000 euro stuff, really exotic, really fun, really exciting. But not really relatable to me or to a lot of us, I suppose. I mean, this is something most of us might actually be able to afford one day. This is 6,800 euros. And I just think that's a lot more fun to talk about, you know. And I also feel like it's a lot more appropriate on the street. 200 horsepower is very exciting and very fun. But this thing only having about 42 horsepower, I believe, that just makes it a lot more usable. You're able to ring it out, you're able to use the revs. And I think that's just what motorcycling is all about, right? Just having fun and not taking yourself too seriously. So when Royal Enfield offered the opportunity for me to ride this Guerrilla 450, I'm very excited. I've been riding it now for the past week, about 500 kilometers. And in today's video, I'm basically just going to give you my opinion on it, all the things I like about it, things I dislike about it, and whether I would actually buy one. So let me get kitted up and then come along, join me for a nice little ride on this 2025 Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450 today. It's not as light as you might expect. I mean, hold on, let me check how heavy this thing is on the specs. It's a 185 kgs. I mean, it's about the same as an MT-07, which is 30 horsepower more and 300 cc's more. So maybe not the best, but I mean, it's light enough, I guess. It's a bit harder to put on a center stand than I expected.
Right, we are headed to one of my favorite roads here in Amsterdam municipality. And the reason I'm going there specifically is because it's very tight, very twisty, very narrow. And I think that's going to be an excellent way to test this Guerrilla 450 in its natural habitat. So I got this road first, which is also really tight and it's got a lot of driveway, so got to be a little bit careful over here. But then we're going to hit a more flowing road. First off, I gotta say, when I got on this thing, I was a bit disappointed in the engine character, just straight off the bat, because it's very quiet and the power delivery is not quite what I expected. So when I thought of a 450cc single, which doesn't rev all that high, you would think it would be pretty lopey and all torque, but it's actually a lot revier than I expected. Which is not a bad thing per se. Personally, I do prefer more torquey engines instead of revy engines, especially in a single, because you want that braap feeling, you know. But I do have to say, as the week progressed and I rode it more, I started to like it more and more, because you get used to the fact that you do have to be in a lower gear and you have to ring it out more. So in the end, I don't think it's objectively a bad thing. It makes a pretty decent amount of power. But it was just a lot different than I expected, and that explains my initial disappointment. Now, weaving through these cyclists and on this country lane, I can already tell you that this thing is so incredibly agile. And now Royal Enfield, of course, has a lot of, it's an Indian brand these days, so it has a lot of Indian influences. And I know that one of the big things in India is that you get a lot of traffic and big cities, you know, so you have to make a very agile bike so you can cut through the traffic. And you can definitely tell that in this Guerrilla 450. You got such a wide handlebar, so you get so much leverage over the front end. You sit up really nice and high, and it almost feels like a bit of a miniature adventure bike or a miniature supermoto, and that you can just throw the bike underneath you. You can lean out, you don't have to lean in, and then like this, you can use the engine to punch it out of the corner. And in that way it is very fun and very capable around these twisty roads. And then as I alluded to in the beginning of this video, because this is not the most powerful bike, you can't just ring it out when you get out of a corner. You don't have to worry about losing your license as fast, you know? And that to me is just so much more fun than having 150, 200 horsepower and not being able to use it anywhere except for on the highway or really long open straights where you know there's not going to be traffic or police. But over here in these corners, like these are what my local roads look like. They're definitely not suited to higher power bikes, and that's why I love these little bikes so much. And I know if you live in like Texas, for example, where you do have all those big open straights, sure, a Super Sport or a Hayabusa or something is a lot of fun. But over here in Holland, we just don't have that kind of freedom. Whoop. But maybe, you know, with an exhaust, this thing would be perfect already. Maybe, I don't know, I'd have to hear one with an I'd have to hear one with an aftermarket exhaust. Maybe the engine character is what I'm looking for, but it's just too quiet. So what's it like when you are stuck behind a car on a bumpy road, lower speeds, in the city? Well, when the engine is cold, the throttle response can be a bit jerky and unpredictable, I've found. But once the engine and the system warms up, it becomes a lot more manageable. The suspension does a pretty good job of soaking up the bumps. This is a really bad road, and as you can probably hear by my voice, I'm not getting shaken around or thrown around too much. So yeah, definitely comfortable enough. Oh, is this person gonna let me pass? That's so nice. Yeah, that's so nice, wow. And again, the big fat handlebar, it's just so agile. And although it's not the lightest bike in its class, 185 kgs is definitely light, but not groundbreakingly light or anything. But it just feels very easy and very fun in this environment. Like, punch it out of there, you can give it some gas. And yeah, it just feels very playful and very at home, which I suppose is not a surprise, considering the Indian roots and yeah, just the whole brief of this motorcycle. And another advantage of a small motorcycle in the city is that it doesn't get too hot. If you're on a Super Sport or you know, a big naked bike or a cruiser, they can be pretty toasty in summer. But on this, you know, no problem. It's liquid cooled, so yeah, it's been pretty hot over the last few days over here in Holland, but no issues. And when you're almost at a standstill like this, it's so easy to keep it rolling. I almost never put my foot down on this bike because you can basically come to a dead stop and then still have it be stable and comfortable even at such low speeds. So yeah, it's very well balanced. And over those little bumps, you just give it a little blip of throttle and then launch yourself up into the air. So it's just playful, you know, it's pretty cheerful. The only thing I would change so far is just give it a little bit more torque and a bit more bottom end instead of mid-range. It would just amplify the fun even more, you know. But I suspect there is a reason why Royal Enfield has made it this way, which I'll get into later in this video. Wop. And now that we're coming up to a roundabout, one other downside, or one thing I definitely had to get used to, is these tires. So they're Seat Grippies, which I think is a hilarious name and not a tire I've ever heard of. But yeah, going around these roundabouts, and if you give it a little bit more lean angle, it does that typical off-road adventure bike tire thing where first it tips in pretty nicely, but once you go over a certain point, it falls into the corner, like it's almost like you're falling over. And it doesn't mean that there's no grip. I mean, the tires are decently grippy in the dry like this, but it does take a little bit longer that way to gain the confidence in the grip. And I have to admit, I haven't ridden these tires in the rain, so I can't comment on the wet grip. Personally, I think if I were to buy this bike, the first thing I would do is put on some Pirelli Scorpion STRs, which are the same tires that came stock on my Tenere 700. And they had the same look as this, so big block pattern-ish. bit of an off-road look, but just excellent on-road grip in the dry and in the wet. And to be honest, I think that's what this bike could have came standard with. But yeah, it's a little bit of a budget bike, so I do understand them not going with the most expensive Pirellis. Yeah, you can always put it on later yourself. Yeah, you can always put it on later yourself, I guess. So this is the road. I think this is going to be perfect for the Guerrilla. Chuck it in here. Lean out like you're on a supermoto. Punch it out. Still doing legal speeds-ish. You're not pissing off all the people around here with a crazy loud exhaust or anything. And it's just harmless fun, you know? And when you do get it out on the road like this, the engine does come into its own more. Because you are up in the revs and you're playing with the gearbox, you are able to keep it in the power band pretty much constantly. The gearing is spread out very well. So it just makes for a very fun B-road blaster. Whoop. And the thing I like about leaning out like supermoto style instead of leaning in on the Supersport, on the street you get a lot more vision through the corner. Like if you're all the way down here, down low, you see I'm almost hitting the bush. Whereas if you stay on the outside of your bike, you get a lot more vision. So yeah, I know you are introducing more lean angle, but to be honest, these tires are grippy enough like this that it's no problem. And the suspension is honestly pretty fine. For a pretty budget naked bikes, hello? Suspension setup. It feels pretty great. I don't think you could wish for more for this price class, for this price point. Especially considering the fact that it's also not brittle or hard. It's also pretty comfortable. So it definitely feels like Royal Enfield has made a pretty good balance between the sportiness and the comfort. Oh yeah, boy.
Alright, so quick stop for lunch, and I figured this will be a good opportunity to talk about the looks of the Guerrilla 450, which I think actually might be one of its strongest upsides. I think it looks absolutely amazing. There's a lot of nice detail to it, and yeah, something you might not expect for this level of motorcycle. The paint quality seems really nice. There's like a lovely metallic fleck in the blue. And yeah, you have some nice Royal Enfield embossings all over the bike, on the foot pegs, on the mirrors, and I just think, yeah, just surprisingly nice. And overall the proportions are pretty good. It feels like, yeah, a baby Ducati Scrambler. I think that's pretty much what Royal Enfield was going for. And I think they nailed it. So, yeah, another nice positive about the Guerrilla. I'm gonna eat something. Hummus and Y food happy banana. So yeah, definitely going for the nutritious, healthy lifestyle today again. Something I always try to embrace, the healthy lifestyle. Healthy food makes you feel good, and who doesn't want to feel good?
So as you can see, it's got plenty of power for merging on the highway. And remember when I told you earlier that there's a reason why I think Royal Enfield has made this engine a little bit more revvy and a little bit longer legged than I was expecting. Well, if you might recall, this engine was originally designed for the new Himalayan 450. So, lightweight adventure bike. And adventure bike, of course, also having to do long distances. It makes total sense that this engine has been made to go higher speeds and make it power more in the mid-range. Because as you can see right now, I'm on the freeway doing about 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. And it's about 5,000 RPMs. So right now it's about in the sweet spot of where this engine begins to make its power. And if it were to be, well, if it were to make its power lower down, it would already be fizzling out when you're on the highway. So yeah, again, for the Himalayan, that makes perfect sense. And it actually does mean that this Guerrilla 450 is also surprisingly versatile. So last week I had to do a very long highway stint, 1.5 hours. And then on the way back it was average of 130 to 150 kilometers an hour. And it handled it surprisingly well. I know that on the old 350 air-cooled engine you would never be able to do that. It would barely be able to hold 120 kilometers an hour. So yeah, although this is not quite what I expected of the engine, I do think that it makes it a lot more of a well-rounded package. And yeah, it does allow you to cover long distances in relative comfort. Other than that, because of the big fat handlebar, you are sitting in the wind, like your entire chest is a windsill. So that's a bit of a downside. You can hunker down like this and then lean into the wind a little bit and then it's fine. But yeah, of course it's not going to be the most comfortable highway bike, but that's totally fair and not what this bike was designed for anyways. So yeah, it's actually surprisingly good on the highway like this. Entering this tunnel does remind me to talk about the headlights. So I rode this thing in the dark a bunch of times, and although it's small and it seems quite basic, this headlight works so well. So on low beam, on high beam, doesn't really matter. I hope you can see it because it is quite dark on the GoPro over here. But yeah, just surprisingly well. It's a good amount of light, but it also travels down really far if you put on the high beams. So yeah, another nice thing and something that a lot of people might not really appreciate until you ride it in the dark. Yeah, just the fact being able to see when you're riding, of course, yeah, not a insignificant factor, I'd say.
Alright, so last few things I want to mention about the Guerrilla 450. Yeah, I want to show you the seating position. I am 6'1", 185 centimeters. And although this is, you know, a small capacity bike, mid-capacity bike, it's actually quite spacious. So as you can see, legroom is actually pretty decent, even though I have very long legs. Reach to the handlebars is pretty nice. And overall it's just a very neutral and comfortable riding experience. So yeah, definitely nice. Other thing I want to mention is the TFT dash on this thing. So let me grab the camera and I'll show you. Let me fire it up. So you can see you have a nice little startup sequence with Guerrilla 450 logo. And then if I turn my polarizer, you can see it over here. As some of you might know, I'm generally not the biggest fan of TFT dashes, but I think this one looks pretty nice. It's pretty minimal, it's pretty clean. You have all the information you need. So odometer, fuel range, time, gear indicator, fuel level, rev counter, speed, and then if you have the little joystick over here, underneath here, and then if you use that, you can go into the sub menu. So over here you have your trips, and as you can see, the fuel economy 21.3 kilometers per liter, and going down you have fuel range, fuel consumption, voltage, service due, engine temperature. And yeah, that's it, pretty basic. The bike also comes with ride modes. So over here, if you press this, you see you can toggle between the different ride modes. Well, actually it's only eco and performance. So personally I've only left it in performance for the entire time I've had this bike. And it looks like you can turn the APS off. So is that, I don't know. I'd have to look into how to do that. But so yeah, actually really like the TFT dash. And then finally I quickly just want to touch on the brakes. These are bi-brake calipers. By Brembo, some of you might already know it, it's on a lot of KTMs. And the brakes on this are definitely powerful enough, even though it's only a single disc. Yeah, no issues with the stopping power at all. So I have to hand this bike back in a moment, and I think that makes it time for closing thoughts. Do I love this bike? No. Yeah, for me the engine characteristics just aren't necessarily the way I would like it, but that's heavily up to personal preference. And I have to say, the more I've ridden it, the more I've grown to like it actually. I think it's a lot of fun, it's very good value for money, it's well finished. So I think Royal Enfield did definitely nail the brief of making this a cheap and cheerful motorcycle that a lot of people can afford and just has accessible performance, not taking yourself too seriously. And I think maybe if you put on some different tires and change the exhaust, you would just be able to enjoy it even more. And yeah, that might actually sway me into the I would buy one camp. But for now, yeah, really enjoyed it. Lately I've noticed that I'm kind of transitioning into a different kind of style. So maybe you might have noticed that this is a lot more informal than my videos are usually. I just found myself becoming trapped in the kind of YouTube retention algorithm kind of feeling, and that's not something I really like. I just want to be a person who talks about something they love, you know, about motorcycles. And yeah, after the last few videos I just feel like I've been chasing the algorithm and the retention stats a little bit too much. So yeah, I'm just gonna try and relax, have fun, not worry about making my videos too perfect or too structured or organized, but just, yeah, you know, showing you a little bit more of myself and my personality, and talking from the passion I have for these motorcycles instead of just churning out videos for the algorithm. So yeah, that being said, again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, I'm trying to be nice to myself, and I hope you are kind to yourself as well. So yeah, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.